Hi everyone, happy Monday. Just wanted to go over a few items from our quiz and from the info that we had reviewed last week. So last week we talked about torts. So we talked about negligence, which is probably the most commonly um, used tort within the healthcare setting. And we also talked about intentional torts like defamation and assault and battery, those types of things. And then we also talked about tort reform and malpractice, and specifically in that section how professional conduct is such an important part of of a healthcare organization overall. So hopefully you found our discussion about the Tennessee nurse interesting. I think that that has the potential to be kind of earth-shattering when it comes to the healthcare sector and negligence claims overall, or negligence versus some sort of a criminal conduct hearing. So in this case, obviously, I won't rehash the whole thing, but we have a nurse that made an error that led to the death of a patient, and now that nurse is being charged with a crime for that. Um, think about, so kind of roll back and think about, okay, physician malpractice overall. So a physician doing a surgical procedure accidentally lacerates the patient's aorta, patient bleeds out in seconds, and that physician right now is, it's a malpractice and in some cases, it's not even necessarily a not necessarily a true malpractice case if the information isn't shared sorry about that, if the information isn't shared with the proper folks in the organization. Sometimes reviews of that nature go to what's called peer review. And when you have a peer review situation like that, the family doesn't ever find out that there was an issue. So there is kind of some sneakiness in the healthcare sector right now. But that physician in that example that I said would never go to jail for what they did, not in the current system. Whereas if this case continues forward and there ends up being a prosecution of some sort, that could truly be earth-shattering to our industry for a multitude of reasons. People will not want to go into healthcare to provide direct care. We already have shortages of nurses, PCAs, CMAs. We have shortages in those areas, shortages of primary care physicians. So people are not going to want to go into direct care positions, but also we're trying to build a culture in the healthcare setting where people feel comfortable coming forward with errors. And something like that is certainly not going to encourage people to be comfortable coming forward with an error because they're going to look to cover it up so they don't end up going to jail. So very scary case. I can see the good of both sides. If it was my family member that had been killed in this type of a situation or that had died, I may want justice as well. So it's pretty scary to think about it in either way. So for this week, I'll go over the quiz stuff in just a minute. For this week, we're actually moving on to talk about HIPAA. So we talked a lot about torts because tort cases are one area where we have a lot of fines, not necessarily fines, in some cases a fine. In more cases, it's just settlements being paid out, millions and millions of dollars by healthcare organizations due to negligence claims. We have a similar issue with HIPAA. So HIPAA's been around for a long time. We're still really bad at it, unfortunately. We're bad at maintaining people's privacy and security. And so hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about HIPAA this week. And we'll have some activities related to that. Your writing assignment this week is kind of a case study that I want you to provide some analysis on whether a privacy and or security breach occurred. Our discussion board this week is going to go back to a regular traditional written discussion board because I want you to find an article and share some information about that. So don't forget to cite your sources so that we can go out and take a look at the article if we want to, just so we're better able to respond to you. So let's take a look at some of the quiz questions. So our first quiz question that was frequently missed was blank is the performance of an unlawful or improper act. So our correct answer is malfeasance. Remember we talked about or we read about malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance in our reading this week and in the slides. So malfeasance is obviously when you're doing something that's, you're performing an act that's unlawful or improper in some way. So a good example I can think of is physician-assisted suicide. Not legal, can happen though. So that would be a malfeasance because a person is performing an act that is illegal, unlawful. Misfeasance is when you're performing an act that's legal and proper, but you're doing it poorly. So that would be a misfeasance situation. Nonfeasance is when you neglect to do something, to complete an act that you should have done. So missed a medication that led to the patient's death. Something of that nature. You should have acted and you didn't, so that's going to be a nonfeasance. But in this case, performance of an unlawful, improper act is malfeasance. Next question. Several states have modified the collateral source rule in order to. There are several options here, but they've modified that to limit damages payable to a plaintiff. So collateral source rule says that all of the information about payments that a person, a plaintiff, may have gotten from other sources are not admissible to court. So let's say that a plaintiff is suing a healthcare facility for some malpractice action, or maybe they're suing because they fell in their facility and broke their hip, something of that nature. These people may get insurance payments. They may get payment from the healthcare provider's insurer. They may get payment from their own insurance to cover medical damages, is a good example, or to cover medical expenses. What the collateral source rule says is that you cannot submit that information about those payments to the court. So the court will look over the entire all of what is due to the patient or patient's family, and then pay that out as such, ignoring the fact that maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars have already been paid by insurance. Several states are trying to modify the court's collateral source rule so that patients get what they are due, but only what they are due. So if they've already received $250,000 from an insurance company, they're not going to be able to collect that in addition from the provider or through the court action, through settlement. The last question is depending on the word, is the intentional touching of another's person in a socially impermissible manner without that person's consent. So remember we talked about assault and battery. Our answer is battery. Assault is when you're in a situation where you provide a threat to someone about, hey, I'm going to punch you in the face, and it appears that I would be able to punch you in the face. So that would be assault. Battery is when you actually punch somebody in the face. So you'll often see them together, assault and battery, as far as charges go generally. But in our case, where we often see battery is when you perform a surgery without informed consent, when you perform surgery, maybe on the wrong side of the body. Those types of things can often can lead to battery charges. So that's where we see that most frequently in our industry. That's all I have for this week. Like I said, we have our HIPAA case study for this week, so be sure to dig into that and a few other HIPAA elements that I thought were helpful outside of the information that's provided in the text. So if you need anything, please let me know, and I'll look forward to hearing everyone's chosen HIPAA breaches and whatnot that you post to the discussions this week. Okay, thanks so much.